Tractate Yadayim, General Introduction. Tractate Yadayim, Hands, discusses the laws of Tumas Yadayim, Tumah of hands, the state of Tumah that the rabbis decreed on a person's hands in certain situations. The tractate consists of 4 chapters. The first 2 chapters deal with the laws related to the purification of hands from Tumas Yadayim. The remaining 2 chapters deal with the situations in which hands become subject to Tumas Yadayim. 1. Tumah of the hands. Levels of Tumah. Tumah can be transmitted from one thing to another. In general, when Tumah is transmitted, the level of Tumah decreases with each transmission. Something that receives Tumah from an Ava Tumah, literally father of Tumah, i.e. a primary source of Tumah, becomes a Rishon L'Tumah, first degree of acquired Tumah. Something that receives Tumah from a Rishon L'Tumah becomes a Sheni L'Tumah, second degree of acquired Tumah. A Sheni L'Tumah makes other things a Shlishi L'Tumah, third degree of acquired Tumah. A Shlishi L'Tumah makes a Revi L'Tumah, fourth degree of acquired Tumah. People and utensils can acquire Tumah only from an Ava Tumah. Food that is Chulin, i.e. unsanctified, can also acquire Tumah from a Rishon L'Tumah. Teruma can acquire Tumah even from a Sheni L'Tumah, while only Kodashim, sacrificial food, can acquire Tumah from a Shlishi L'Tumah. The decree. Under biblical law, there is no such thing as only a person's hands being Tameh. If one touches an Ava Tumah, his entire body becomes Tameh, not only his hands. And if he touches a Rishon L'Tumah, not only his hands become Tameh. However, the rabbis decreed that in certain circumstances, a person's hands do become Tameh on the level of Sheni L'Tumah, while the rest of his body remains Tahor. This rabbinically decreed Tumas Yadayim applies in the following situations. 1. Stam Yadayim, ordinary hands. Ordinary hands, Stam Yadayim, are hands that were not washed in the prescribed manner, Netilat Yadayim, see further below. By rabbinic law, they are declared Tameh to the degree of Sheni L'Tumah. The reason for this Tumah is that a person's hands are active, Hayadayim askaniyot hein, and very often touch things without the person being aware. Thus, it is quite possible that without realizing it, one touched parts of his body that were wet from perspiration or otherwise unclean. If he would then touch sanctified foods, Teruma or Kodashim, these foods might become repulsive. To avoid such disrespectful treatment of sanctified foods, the rabbis forbade them to be handled with unwashed hands. See Rashi to Shabbos 14a. To strengthen the prohibition, the rabbis declared a Sheni L'Tumah status on such hands, so that they will make Teruma and Kodashim foods Tameh on contact. See Chadushay Aran to Shabbos there. The decree of ordinary hands includes hands that had been purified by washing them in the prescribed manner, but the person subsequently diverted his attention from them, has sechadat, diversion of attention, and did not pay attention to what he touched. Such hands revert to the status of Stam Yadayim and require a new Netilas Yadayim to become purified of their Tumah. The decree of ordinary hands was first enacted by King Shlomo. However, he declared them Tameh only with respect to Kodashim. Later, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel decreed them Tameh with regard to Teruma as well. See Shabbos 15a and b. 2. Hands that touch a source of Tumah. The rabbis also decreed that a person's hands become Tameh if they touch a source of Tumah, even a weak source that does not make a person Tameh. As mentioned above, by biblical law, a person becomes Tameh only through contact with an Ava Tumah. If he touches a Rishon L'Tumah, he remains Tahor. The rabbis decreed that by touching the Rishon L'Tumah with his hands, the hands themselves become Tameh, as Sheni L'Tumah, see chapter 3, Mishnah 1. Because his hands are Tameh, he is forbidden to handle Teruma or Kodashim, because he would transmit Tumah to them. 3. Hands that touch Torah scroll. The rabbis also decreed Tumas Yadayim on hands that touch Torah scroll, Sefer Torah. The Gemara, Shabbos 14a, states in the name of Rab Parnach that it is forbidden to touch Torah scroll with one's bare hands, because the hands might not be clean. In order to discourage the practice, the rabbis decreed that if one does touch the scroll, his hands become Tameh to the decree of Sheni L'Tumah. 4. Kivsei Kodesh, scrolls of Holy Scripture. In addition to decreeing a Sheni degree of Tumah on hands that touch Torah scroll, the rabbis also decreed a Sheni level of Tumah on hands that touch a scroll of Scripture, Kivsei Kodesh, i.e. a scroll containing one of the 24 books of Tanakh. This decree was actually an extension of another rabbinic decree, under which Kivsei Kodesh themselves are Tameh on the level of Sheni L'Tumah. That decree was enacted for the following reason. People had the practice of storing their Teruma next to Kivsei Kodesh, reasoning that both are holy objects and it is appropriate to store them together. However, the practice caused damage to the scrolls, because mice were attached to the food and chewed the scrolls as well. In order to discourage this practice, the rabbis declared that all Kivsei Kodesh are Tameh, to the decree of Sheni L'Tuma, and transmit Tuma to Teruma on contact. Such Teruma must be protected from any Tuma. No one would risk placing his Teruma next to the scrolls. Since Teruma must be protected from any Tuma, no one would risk placing his Teruma next to the scrolls. See Shabbos 14a. To strengthen the decree, it was further expanded by decreeing that Kivsei Kodesh transmit the Tuma not only to Teruma, but also to a person's hands that touch them, making the hands Sheni L'Tuma, so that the hands themselves transmit Tuma to Teruma. See Rav Kalim 15.6 and Rambam commentary to Mishnah 3.3 below. 2. Netilas Yadayim, washing of the hands. In all cases of Tumas Yadayim, the hands can be purified either by dipping them in a valid mikvah or by washing them in a prescribed manner known as Netilas Yadayim. Netilas Yadayim must be performed with a specified amount of water. The water must be contained in a vessel and poured over the entire tummy surface of the hand. The details of the procedure are discussed in Chapter 1. Netilas Yadayim for Teruma and Kodashim. Since tummy hands are affected by Tuma to the decree of Sheni L'Tuma, they can transmit Tuma to Teruma and Kodashim on contact. Thus, someone whose hands are tummy must perform Netilas Yadayim before handling Teruma or Kodashim. Otherwise, his hands will make these foods tummy. Netilas Yadayim is mandatory not only before handling Teruma or Kodashim, but even if one eats these foods without touching them, i.e. someone fed them to him. This requirement was instituted by the rabbis out of concern that the person might touch Teruma or Kodashim while eating them. Netilas Yadayim for Chulin. Initially, the Netilas Yadayim requirement applied only to Teruma and Kodashim. Subsequently, however, the requirement was extended to include anyone eating even Chulin bread. Although Chulin does not become Tameh from Tameh hands, the rabbis wanted everyone to be in the habit of washing their hands before eating, so as to ensure that the Kohanim would comply and perform Netilas Yadayim before eating Teruma. They therefore enacted that Netilas Yadayim is also required before eating Chulin. However, in the case of Chulin, they required it only for bread, since that is the most common form of Teruma. See Chulin 106a. The rabbis also instituted Netilas Yadayim for Chulin as a matter of cleanliness and hygiene. Cleanliness is regarded as an aspect of holiness. See Rambam to Vayikra 19.1. And the regulation of Netilas Yadayim finds support in the biblical verse there in 27, and you shall sanctify yourselves and be holy. Holy, see Chulin, and Brachos 35b. Mayim Rishonim and Mayim Shenim, although washing the hands in the prescribed manner removes the Tuma. From them, that water itself becomes Tameh as soon as it comes into contact with the Tameh hands. Therefore, it is necessary to pour water over the hands a second time. This second washing removes the Tuma of the water of the first washing. The wash of the first wash is known as Mayim Rishonim, first waters, and that of the second wash is known as Mayim Shenim, second waters. Netilas Yadayim nowadays. The Netilas Yadayim requirement for Teruma is no longer relevant, since Kohanim are forbidden to eat Teruma nowadays because we are all presumed to be Tameh. The requirement to perform Netilas Yadayim before eating Chulin, however, is applicable nowadays too, even though Kohanim may no longer eat Teruma. This is because we look forward to the imminent arrival of Mashiach, when Kohanim will be able to purify themselves and once again eat Teruma. See Mishnah 158.1. Furthermore, the reason of cleanliness and hygiene is relevant to nowadays as it was in earlier times.